All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Touchdown Glass podcast. I am your host, Michael V. Jones. You know, here at the Touchdown Glass, we are keeping it 100% real. No crazy hot takes or agendas, just good old fashioned football talk the way you like it. And as always, I appreciate you listening. All right, well, Thanksgiving's getting closer. The football games are getting more meaningful in college and the pros. That's what makes it fun. High school playoff football upon us. It's just a good time of year, right? I mean, unless your team sucks like me, then it's still fun though. Just being a fan of the game, and that's what I encourage everybody to do. When you're just not having that kind of your team's not having that year, they're having that year. Yeah, find enjoyment in a good story out there. There is always a few of them. So growing this in a little thicker, it is No Shave November, right? Or Movember, as some people call it, men's health awareness. So guys, take care of yourselves, right? Testicular exams, prostate exams, those are important to prevent those type of cancers. So hey, everybody, let's grow it and spread awareness, right? All right, well, enough about that. Let's get into the week that was week 10 in the NFL. And what an exciting week, and what an exciting way to start off as we had the Baltimore Ravens defeat the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football 35-34. I mean, this game was explosive as Joe Burrow threw for 428 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, 11 catches, 264 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, he's having a season for the ages. And Lamar Jackson, 290 yards, 4 touchdowns. Of course, we always remember how the game ended, right? It's always the controversy is always at the end, and a 2-point attempt by the Bengals on the road going for the win in Baltimore, and a failed attempt. And a lot of people are pointing out, pass interference wasn't called. There were a few hands to the faces, that could have been a rough in the passer on Joe Burrow, or hands to the face on one of the Bengals offensive linemen, weren't called. But that's the risk you take when you let a game come down to a final play. You do put it in the referee's hands. So, while I feel bad that Cincinnati played a great game and came up short. I can only you can only cry ref so much in this league. Um, anyway, moving on. The Ravens 7-3, Bengals dropped to 4-6. All right, so moving on. Sunday's games in Germany. The Carolina Panthers defeat the New York Football Giants in overtime, 20-17. So the Panthers. Uh, Now at 3-7. I think they only won 2 games all of last year, if I'm not mistaken, and the Giants fall to 2-8. So Bryce Young, an okay day, 15 of 25, 126 yards and a touchdown. But really, the story of the Panthers offense was Chuba Hubbard with 153 yards and 28 carries and a touchdown. Of course, he just got a new contract, and you know, we're seeing a resurgence of the running back and the importance of that position. So why not lock up that guy? Uh, Speaking of running backs, Tyrone Tracy for the New York Giants, 13 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. Nice day for him. Daniel Jones, 22 of 37 with 190 yards and two interceptions. So it looks like the end of the Daniel Jones era in with the Giants. We'll talk about that later. Eddie Pinheiro for the Panthers had the game-winning field goal in overtime after the Giants fumbled on the opening drive of overtime. All right, the New England Patriots defeat the Chicago Bears 19-3, 19-3. So very disappointing for the Bears because they've played so well at home, and to come back home and play a New England team that does not have much offense And it's about another battle of rookie quarterbacks. Obviously, didn't get the headlines of the Jaden Daniels matchup against Washington, but Drake May is quietly having a really nice rookie season. He went 15 to 25, 184 yards. He did throw an interception, but one touchdown to Jalen Polk. Uh, Caleb Williams left a lot to be desired. Again, 16 of 30 for 120 yards. So the Bears' offensive woes continue. There's been some shakeups with some firings and reshuffling of the staff. So we will talk about that later and what this all means for Caleb Williams. All right, the San Francisco 49ers defeated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23 to 20. So this was actually a really good game, return game of Christian McCaffrey, 107 total yards. Brock Purdy with a nice game, 352 yards, 2 touchdowns, throwing touchdown passes to tight end George Kittle and rookie wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. So nice story there. Ricky Pearsall, if you're not familiar with him, was actually shot in San Francisco earlier this season. He wasn't involved in anything, but he got caught up and was in some kind of shooting and was shot. He's been back for a few weeks now, and he's starting to make his way into the Niners offense and make some plays, which is huge since you lost Brandon Ayuk for the season. For the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, a little bit of a rougher day, only 116 yards passing, one touchdown pass to Bucky Irving. I will say this, Baker is a warrior. There was like a 4th and 8 play. Nick Bosa had him dead to rights, and Baker just carried him with a stiff arm and made an improbable pass that was completed for a first down that set up the Bucs to tie the game. It was a rough day for Jake Moody until the end. He did make a 44-yard game-winning field goal after missing 3 previous attempts. So the Niners go to 5-4. The Buccaneers, I think they were 4-1 at one point, 5 losses in a row. Now at 4-6. All right, would you believe the Chiefs are still undefeated, 9-0? They defeat the Denver Broncos 16 to 14. Denver 5-5 now. Bo Nix, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns against this brutal Chiefs defense. So very impressive. Mahomes, 266 yards passing and a touchdown pass to Travis Kelce. And the Broncos were lining up for a game-winning Will Lutz field goal in this. And you're thinking, there go the Chiefs are going to have a loss here. And we knew this would be a tough game for them. Denver plays tough. It's a division game. And lo and behold, someone steps up. And it's not a referee. Leo Chanel of the Chiefs blocks the field goal. Just incredible finish. And it just goes to show you that this team has championship DNA. They're well coached. They just know how to win. They remind you of those New England, that first wave of New England teams that won the Super Bowls, not the ones that maybe the second wave that just blew people out, but found a way to win these close ones every week. That's kind of what it's reminding me of. All right. And KC will go to Buffalo next week. And speaking of those Bills, they go to 8-2 as they defeat the Indianapolis Colts 30 to 20. Indy now 4-6. So this was a back and forth game for a while until Buffalo took control. James Cook and Josh Allen both had rushing touchdowns in this one. Josh Allen also threw 2 interceptions, but Joe Flacco threw 3 interceptions, including a pick 6, also threw 2 touchdowns, and it looks like it is going to be the end of Joe Flacco for now. They're going to insert Anthony Richardson back in the lineup. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The Pittsburgh Steelers defeat the Washington Commanders 28-27. Just a great football game. Steelers go to 7-2. Washington drops to 7-3. Of course, there was some controversy in this one. Zach Ertz looked like he made a first down on a 4th down play. They called it short on the field. They were not able to overturn it. It was super close, and you wonder what could have happened had that drive continued. But the Steelers got the ball turnover on downs. It was fourth down. They had a decision to punt and give the Commanders the ball back or go for it on I think it was like a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 and end the game. Well, a hard count drew Washington off sides, and that was all she wrote there. The Steelers were able to run out the clock from there. Austin Eckler for Washington had 2 1-yard touchdowns. But Russell Wilson was the story of this one. The Steelers trailed by 10 points in the second half, and he was able to throw 3 touchdowns, including the game winner to newly acquired receiver Mike Williams. And we're going to talk more about Russell Wilson later because this is one that's shaping up to be one of the better stories of the 2024 season. All right, the Minnesota Vikings defeat the Jacksonville Jaguars 12-7 in a real snoozer. Vikings go to 7-2, Jags drop to 2-8. So Mac Jones started for the Jaguars in this one. He had a 1-yard touchdown run. Outside of that, it wasn't much. He only threw for 111 yards and threw 2 interceptions. Sam Darnold added 3 interceptions of his own. He did throw for 241 yards. Luckily for the Vikings, they had kicker John Parker Romo, who kicked 4 field goals and gave them all their points. So Minnesota, after that hot start, they had a couple losses, and they just haven't played well lately, even though they won, I think, the past couple games. So, we'll kind of see where that goes. All right, the New Orleans Saints get a win. It's been a while, right, since week 2, but they defeat division rival the Atlanta Falcons 20-17. So New Orleans now 3-7. Falcons dropped to 6-4. Kirk Cousins with 306 yards. He did throw an interception. Bijan Robinson 20 carries, 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. Derek Carr back in action and 2 touchdown passes to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So a little bit of a surprise at how this game went, but maybe the biggest surprise was Younghoe Koo, the usually reliable kicker for the Atlanta Falcons, who made, I think, a 58-yard field goal to beat the Saints earlier this season. He misses 3 field goals, and when you lose 20-17, it's a big difference in that game. All right, the Los Angeles Chargers defeated the Tennessee Titans 27-17. Will Levis had 2 touchdown passes to Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's having a really nice season, a little bit of resurgence for him as well. But Justin Herbert was able to lead the Chargers, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 passing touchdown, and former Titan Hassan Haskins with a 1-yard touchdown run. So the Chargers, again, quietly, it's 6-3. It's very quiet. This is Harbaugh hire is working out perfectly for them. There's no spotlight on him. I mean, outside of Herbert, who a lot of people don't believe in, who are their star players? They're quietly getting things done. And I think, for them to get in the playoffs in Harbaugh's first year, it looks like that might actually happen. How exciting is that? So Chargers 6-3, Titans 2-7. All right, the Arizona Cardinals just manhandled the New York Football Jets 31-6. Cardinals atop the NFC West at 6-4, while the Jets share the basement with the Patriots in the AFC East 3-7. So Kyler Murray, a big game, 287 total yards and 3 total touchdowns. James Conner, 113 total yards and a touchdown. Really, though, I think the story of this game for the Jets, they tried to get back in it, and there was a really bad sequence they had where Aaron Rodgers threw a touchdown pass, or threw what would have been a touchdown pass to Davante Adams, and he just dropped it. I mean, he placed it perfectly to Davante Adams, and unexplainably, he just could not hold on. 4th and goal, the Jets decide to go for it, and Rodgers is strip sacked. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story there. And this is the story of the Jets season. Jeff Ulbrich, the head coach, the interim head coach of the Jets, said, we weren't prepared. And that's very alarming considering they had the mini bye because they played on Thursday Night Football the week before, having 10 days to get ready for this game, and just came out there pretty flat. All right, the Philadelphia Eagles they demolished the Dallas Cowboys 34-6. Philly now atop of the NFC East at 7-2, just half a game, and of course they play Washington tonight. The Cowboys dropped to 3-6. So there were turnovers by both teams early in this game. It's very sloppy, and actually Dallas's defense was sacking Jalen Hurts and making some plays. Saquon Barkley wasn't too big of a factor in this one. By the way, this is the first time he's been on a team that's beaten or played in a game and beaten the Dallas Cowboys. So Saquon Barkley's been in the league since 2018 and played in the NFC East his entire career. So that's pretty wild when you think about that. So yeah, sloppy game by both teams early on. The problem is Philly can score. That was the problem for the Cowboys. They actually have a real offense with a lot of playmakers. Jalen Hurts, despite all his sloppiness, 4 total touchdowns. And when you have Cooper Rush on the other side starting at quarterback and can only throw for 45 yards, yeah, you're not going to have much of a day. They inserted Trey Lance too on some plays, and things did not go much better for the Cowboys. And we'll talk about that Sun issue and these coaching rumors that are swirling around Big D. We'll get to that in a bit. The Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football. Dun, 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 dun. Go to Houston and beat the Texans 26-23. Lions 8-1, best record in the NFC, second best in the NFL. The Houston Texans fall to 6-4, remain atop the AFC South. So Jared Goff, not one of his better games. 15 of 30, 240 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and five interceptions. And then on the flip side, Stroud, 19 of 33, 232 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Houston led this game 23-7 into the third quarter. A lot of that obviously due to the Goff turnovers, but the Lions were able to get it together. St. Brown and Laporta, I believe, scored touchdowns, and Jake Bates with a 52-yard, the Texas native, a 52-yard game-winning field goal for the Detroit Lions. So Lions just prove that, yeah, quarterbacks are vital. It's super important, the quarterback position play. But this, at the end of the day, is a team game. Look at Joe Burrow and the season he's having in his team's record. And Jared Goff can go out and have a bad day, and the Lions are still able to pull it out. So Lions are just one of those complete teams in the National Football League, maybe the most complete. All right, Monday Night Football. Dun, 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 dun. So the Miami Dolphins defeat the Los Angeles Rams at SoFi Stadium 23-15. Miami only their third win of the season, 3-6. Rams fall to 4-5. Still in it though in a very tight NFC West. Tua Tagovailoa, great game, 20 of 28, 207 yards passing and a touchdown to Tyreek Hill. There was a weird sequence of turnovers in this game where it felt like 3 possessions, 3 straight drives, 3 turnovers, like Dolphins gave it back, Rams gave it back, Dolphins gave it back. It was very bizarre, but the Dolphins able to hold on, and the Rams only points came from 5 field goals from kicker Joshua. I'm sorry, 4 field goals from Josh, or 5, yes, my math's off. 5 field goals, 15 points from Joshua Carty. So if I didn't mention the Cleveland Browns, Green Bay Packers, Las Vegas Raiders, or Seattle Seahawks, that is because they had their bye week. All right, so let's jump into the top stories around the league. The Chicago Bears, the Bears. All right, so Shane Waldron out as offensive coordinator. They promote passing game coordinator Thomas Brown. I just feel like the Bears are broken ever since that game in Washington, right? That Hail Mary, I think, has broken this team. That they had a 4-2 start. They were right in the thick of this NFC North. They weren't good enough to compete with the Lions, but maybe the likes of the Packers and Vikings, you felt maybe. And Yeah, it's been very dismal in the Windy City ever since. And does Shane Waldron deserve to get fired? I don't know. I don't know. Everyone's looking at Caleb, and everyone's now, people are so stupid, right? It's this week to week thing. They're so knee jerk. They don't look at the whole pie. Caleb's actually just had some nice games, has shown his talents and how they can translate to the NFL. There are problems with him that can be corrected, him holding on to the ball too much. I think there's some maturity that needs to happen. So there are things with Caleb Williams that I feel can be fixed. I don't think he's a bust. I don't think you bench him. But I think the head coach has lost control of this team. That's the problem. And a lot of this starts at the top because the Bears opted to keep Matt Eberflus, right? Even though he inherited a young quarterback and he wasn't able to develop that quarterback, and they traded that first round pick quarterback and kept him to bring in a new one. So that they kept the GM, they kept the coach, and they bring in a new quarterback, and it just doesn't make sense. I mean, the Giants kind of did this with Daniel Jones, who we'll get to, and that's just been a disaster. That's been a coaching carousel, and that's been a disaster there. So there's a lot of blame here to point around Chicago. I think it starts up top at ownership, front office, head coach. So can you just get Caleb back to playing well and making smart decisions? If you can do that, I, I think then you feel better about Caleb going into next year, and you bring in, maybe a Cliff Kingsbury who he has ties to, or a Ben Johnson from Detroit if he will take the job. Ben Johnson's going to be very selective. I don't know if he's going to want to work for the McCaskies, but if you can kind of bring in one of those guys and further develop him along, and really have this team's identity be Caleb Williams and this Bears offense, I think that's your hope, right? Just get him playing a little better, and then you bring in your guy. Your head coach is going to be a Caleb guy next year, and it's just for the Bears. You do kind of feel for them, like, what is it going to take? There was hope for this season, and it's gone down the drain pretty quickly. But I think your hope going forward is just get Caleb Williams playing better. And I remember what I said. A way to do that, you got to get DeAndre Swift involved, and you know he wasn't as involved or didn't have a great game last game. You got to find him ways to get him the ball, whether it's in short passes or misdirections, something. Get him involved. And we see when he's doing well, Caleb's doing well. So that would be your key. All right, let's talk about another team that will probably likely have a coaching change. I'll get to that in a bit. My Dallas Cowboys. Now, the whole sun thing, I do have to address it. It's so silly. It's so stupid. Jerry Jones builds this stadium, and I get it. The sun coming in does give kind of a cool aesthetics, right? It reminds you of those old Texas stadium Sunday afternoons when the sun would come through the hole in the roof. But it's affecting play on the field. I know it's affected the opposing team in the past, but when it affects your team, when your all pro wide receiver, you, you know, can't locate the ball in the end zone that should have been an easy touchdown from your backup quarterback, it's a problem. Just fix it. We don't, why do teams build domes? Because they don't want the weather affecting the game, right? So why would you want an outside element like the sun when you have a stadium that's covered, a retractable roof? Why would you want that? It's just the arrogance and hubris of Jerry Jones that is crippling this team. Now, I will address the coaching rumors. There's a lot of, Bill Belichick talks are heating up. Um, Deion Sanders talks are heating up. I have to squash the Shador Sanders rumor. It's not feasible to draft if the Cowboys were to get the number one pick. It's really not, and probably no way you can trade Dak Prescott. You just signed him to that contract. It's a 4-year deal that kicks in next year, fully guaranteed. You can't bring in a rookie quarterback who gets a 4-year contract and a 5th-year option. What is he not going to play for 3 years? I mean, it just wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't make any sense at all. So I don't think the prime Shador in Dallas, unless Dak were to waive a trade clause, and I doubt that. He's building a new house. He tore down his house in Dallas and is building a new one. Yeah, I don't see it happening. So I think that's a pipe dream. Now, would Dion come to coach the Cowboys? He says he's a college coach. He says he doesn't want to deal with the BS of, you know, the high price paid players in the pros. I'm not sure that it would work, but Dion does create a presence. He does, command respect. And even though a lot of these guys are too young to have watched Deion Sanders play, they know the highlights. They know prime. He is a legend. So could it work? I don't know. Yeah, you'd like to think part of you would like to think it could. Um, but I just don't. I think it's would be more of a splash hire, uh, and Jerry having his guy, his buddy, than it would. Even though, and that might be what would deter Dion. Like, hey, it's going to be my show. And Jerry might say, well, no, it's going to be my show, and it might just all blow up, right? So I think if you're talking big names, Belichick would make more sense to give this team a culture shock. I don't, do I love it? No. Just look at the way things ended in New England. I don't love it, but it could be the culture shock that this team needs. The smart thing to do would be to hire a young, bright offensive mind. These seem to work. A Ben Johnson, a Cliff Kingsbury, but I don't see the Joneses making that move, and we're just stuck in football purgatory in Big D. All right. Well, speaking of organizations that have issues, Daniel Jones, it looks like the end of him with the New York Giants. It looks like the plan is to start Drew Lock next week. And um, really, this is a move, not so much that Drew Lock's a better option. This is a move that if Jones were to get hurt, they're basically on the hook to pay him another year. It would be a cleaner break to just shut him down and move on. So the John Mara says he doesn't want to move on from Joe Shane and Brian Dable, but is pretty much ready to move on from Daniel Jones. So do you get yourself in another position where you've had a coach and a GM on the hot seat bringing in a new young quarterback, and then you're just firing them and bringing in new people like you basically did with Daniel Jones? I mean, is this his third head coach? And they're still trying to make this experiment work. I know they had a good 2022 season, but that's just kind of that's the exception to the rule, right? On that one, that's the anomaly. So New York Giants, it's just still remains after that Eli era, beating the Patriots in the Super Bowls. It's been pretty mediocre, bad, messy, which we didn't really view the Giants as that in the first half of this century, but that's where we are with that team, right? Owners get older, and we've seen it. Jerry Jones, Al Davis, owners get older, and maybe Bob Kraft, and yeah, they don't. The team just kind of gets crusty with them, right? I don't have the best analogy. Let's talk comeback player of the year. And I think it's going to be Russell Wilson. Remember, there's some chatter about Sam Darnold. It's got to be Russell Wilson. I thought this guy was dead in the water. He was washed, right? I said, yeah, Justin Fields is the way to go. Everybody did. I mean, that was a disaster, Russell Wilson in Denver. But I think Mike Tomlin is what he needed. Sean Payton's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. Russell Wilson was not his guy. But Mike Tomlin, his demeanor, the way he puts things, it works for Russell Wilson. It's resonating. And you see Russ with these, he's got a complementary defense on the other side, and he can go back. Pittsburgh, they run the ball fairly well, and he can do his teardrop passes, right? Now, George Pickens, we were laughing at George Pickens earlier in the year. He's a real ball player now. Uh, here this we think about how good the Ravens are. This Steel and they have a matchup with the Steelers, so this could change in a week, right? Just what a difference a week makes in the NFL. But the Steelers are leading this division right now. And they did some good things with Justin Fields, but now their offense has steak to it, right? It was a lot of sizzle with Justin Fields, not a lot of steak. Now it has the sizzle, the steak. It's still kind of a pound you meat and potatoes type offense. Um, it's not the 99 greatest show on turf Rams. It's not that. But what Russell Wilson is doing is exactly what the Steelers need. And this is, again, like I said, one of the better stories of 2024. I think if he can, play consistent uh, throughout the rest of the season, Steelers make the playoffs. He is your comeback player of the year. All right, speaking of comebacks, Anthony Richardson back in the lineup for the Indianapolis Colts. They said he will be the starter for the remainder of the season. Um, okay, we shall see, because Anthony Richardson has a hard time staying healthy. Never mind his spotty play. Again, a guy like Justin Fields, a lot of sizzle, not a lot of steak, right? Um, you need those in between plays. That's the key. Can he come back and make those? Joe Flacco, I thought would do a little bit better, and he did in some cases have some good games. But under Shane Steichen, it just, he's older and he's a backup, and he had a nice little run in Cleveland last year, and he's a good veteran backup at this point, and he's not going to be able to carry another team into the playoffs. That's pretty clear. So we'll see where this goes. All right, let's preview week 11. We got a great one tonight with the Washington Commanders at the Philadelphia Night Eagles, Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime. Very excited about this one. Commanders kind of felt like they've cooled off a little bit, still playing really good football, but maybe just don't quite feel like the force that they were earlier in the season. However, they go into Philly and get this win, which they are very capable of. This is a division game on a short week. Anything can happen. And this is still a really good football team. And Philly, they have a liability in their head coach, Nick Sirianni, okay? They can be sloppy with the football. We saw that don't let that score fool you in Dallas. I mean, Jalen Hurts was like sacked 5 times, threw an interception, had a fumble. So they can be a little sloppy with the football. And this is a Washington team that is physical and can take advantage of that. They are very physical on the offensive side of the ball, and the defense is playing better. So a very exciting matchup. If the Eagles win, then it feels like they are really on track to win this division, because they'll not only be a game up, they'll have that first head-to-head tiebreaker. Doesn't mean that it's over, but I would feel really confident about Philly winning the division if they get this game. But I think it's going to be a great game. All right, Sunday's matchups. The Las Vegas Raiders at the Miami Dolphins. Can the Miami Dolphins get back in this thing? It looks like they have a schedule that's going to work out for them. And taking on a team like the Las Vegas Raiders after getting a win on the road in prime time at the Rams, this could be the start of them maybe being that team that could sneak in the back door of the playoffs if Tua is able to stay healthy. We shall see. Gardner Minshew back to starting for the Raiders. I know Raider fans are pulling their hair out, but what are you going to do? Who are you going to turn to? The season's over again. Very sorry. All right, the Cleveland Browns at the New Orleans Saints. So Cleveland coming off a bye. Jameis Winston returning to New Orleans. Not that he played a ton there, but returning to New Orleans, where he spent some time as a backup. Um, yeah, not really sure. Does Cleveland show us anything coming off that bye. Did that win in Atlanta mean anything for New Orleans? Last week, what team can this Rizzy, the interim head coach for the Saints, make it two in a row and really boost morale there? I'm not sure. Obviously these teams probably have no chance of making the playoffs. But which one do we feel better about coming out of this game? All right, the Indianapolis Colts at the New York Football Jets. So Anthony Richardson back in action. Jets coming off another tough loss. You just kind of throw your hands up in the air and how is this going to go? How are the Jets going to look? Does Aaron really fire this team up and have them play for pride, or does he mail it in? And does Anthony Richardson, has anything changed since he's been benched? Has he had some kind of epiphany? Is he going to go out and we know he can make big plays, but can he make those, short to intermediate consistent throws that you need to sustain drives? That's what we need to see. All right, the Minnesota Vikings at the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans, even though they don't win a lot of games, they have a good running back in Tony Pollard. They have a wide receiver in Calvin Ridley, who's having a really nice season. And if the Minnesota Vikings are to turn things over, if the Minnesota Vikings are to turn things, get out of here. If the Minnesota Vikings are to cause turnovers, then all bets are off because you can't live week to week like this with Sam Darnold throwing these picks. You have a really good roster, but you're only going to face so many Joneses, and one of them, a Will Levis, will make one day make you pay. So can the Vikings kind of give you that dominant performance that they had, that they would have week to week earlier in this year, and make you feel better about them going forward? That's really what I want to see out of the Vikings. All right, the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears. So if you really want to make your fans happy, beat the Packers, right? If you only won two more games this year, because I don't even know if you've played the Packers this year or not. Maybe you have. I can't remember, and I do apologize. But win this game, right? Beat the Packers. If you beat the Packers, you win a lot of points with the Bears fans, because the Packers, it's not only the oldest rivalry in the NFL, it's really just kind of been what's holding the Bears back from just taking that next step. It always seems like there's a game against Green Bay. They can win this. We're kind of feeling good. We're kind of launching ourselves into that next phase. And Green Bay always says, not on my watch. So can't you get this Green Bay team in your house? Green Bay coming in off a bye. This is big. This is big, and I don't think the Bears can make the playoffs, but they need this. Right? They need, if Caleb Williams can be that guy to beat the Packers, then you're feeling really good about Caleb Williams again. But it's a lot easier said than done. Green Bay, really good defense, good running game, and if Jordan Love's on, then it's going to be tough. All right, the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Detroit Lions. So, we got a Thundercat against a kitty cat. The Detroit Lions, obviously the Thundercat. I'm not sure if Lawrence or Jones plays in this one. I don't think it matters. Detroit is going to be way too much for them to handle. Of course, Jacksonville too, having to go on the road and do this. I think the Lions, you got to feel bulletproof after you didn't play that well in Houston and you still come out of there with a win. I think they're going to be fired up at home. That crowd's going to be into it, and it could get real ugly really early. All right, this one's a great game, and I don't know how it's not prime time. It should be flex because I think it's a 1 o'clock game. But the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is, yeah, I mean, this is huge. I mean, I think if Pittsburgh was able to pull this off, you're feeling really good about your chances to win the division. Obviously, if Baltimore is able to do it, I think they establish themselves as the top dog. in the division. It's in Pittsburgh. It's always wild when these two get together. It's going to be so much fun. I'm really, really looking forward to this matchup. And can Russell Wilson continue the magic, or is it just going to be Lamar and Derrick Henry and that offense pouring it on? Can't wait to see. It's going to be fun. All right, Seattle Seahawks coming off a bye at the San Francisco 49ers. So Niners looks like they're finally starting to find their groove, right? Little issues with the kicker, but at the end of the day, he made the game-winning field goal. McCaffrey's back in it. He was making plays. Your first-round receiver, Ricky Pearsall, is now a part of that offense. And the Seahawks, it looks like they'll have DK Metcalf back. Uh, I think this is sink or swim for them. They got to get something going now. Luckily for them, nobody's running away with this division yet. But if they're going to get back in it, they have got to get a win, and they got to do it against the 49ers. And if the 49ers are that team that's going to make a run, deep run into the playoffs, you got to take care of business at home against Seattle. So big matchup for both teams. The Atlanta Falcons at the Denver Broncos. I think these two teams are very similar in a lot of ways, a lot of talent. They're not a team that you can gloss over. However, they're just not that team that's, they're a team that can make the playoffs, and that's about it, I think. So very similar. Uh, Atlanta's still in a good spot to win their division, especially with Tampa Bay unable to get back to winning football games. But they got to, you know, get a little more consistent, or else, Tampa could get back in it. I know the Falcons have basically a 3-game lead on them, but you don't want to get cute here. But going into Mile High against a team that plays a pretty good defense and a rookie quarterback that is executing the head coach, playing very intelligently, and executing what Sean Payton's calling. I think this could be a good game that comes down to the wire, and hopefully for Young Wei Koo, he has a better week. Obviously, Denver is a friendly place for kickers with that thin air, and this could be a field goal game. All right. Huge matchup in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs at the Buffalo Bills. So obviously, this is kind of like that modern day Patriots Colts rivalry. That's what this reminds me of. And we saw the Colts eventually break through. Can the Bills eventually break through, right? And that would be, obviously this game's not going to determine that. But if Buffalo were able to knock off the Chiefs, and the Chiefs struggle to beat the Bills in the regular season, I think it's the playoffs where they get them. But if the Bills were able to knock off the Chiefs, end their undefeated streak, and again, it's in Buffalo, Chiefs playing very good, doing what they need to do to win, but we're not seeing, them just piling it on teams like we have in the past. Can Buffalo pull this win off and now go, what would that put them at, 9-2, and really have them in the Super Bowl conversation, I think, if they are able to get this win. But if the Chiefs go to 10-0, I mean, it's just looking more and more like home field advantage guaranteed for Kansas City. As we get to the latter part of the season, and how huge is home field advantage in KC? Do you remember the home playoff game? Even though they went on the road and won playoff games last year, remember the game against Miami? There it was like what, negative. I don't know. It was a really cold game, -6 degrees, and I maybe even lower than that. Crazy, ridiculous wind chill, and that played a huge, huge advantage for the Chiefs. So the home field at Arrowhead's huge, and I think Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and company have proven that. So big game, going to be a lot of fun. I want to see if Josh Allen can really protect the football against this Chiefs defense and play play to win, but play like, not put too much on him and rely on James Cook and his playmakers. I think that's going to be key. All right, Sunday Night Football. Dun, 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 dun. Cincinnati Bengals at the Los Angeles Chargers. So is this one last stand for the Bengals? Because at 4-6, you're running out of chances. And Burrow, Chase, they're all pros this year. I mean, they're having hell of a season statistic wise, and it just hasn't translated into the wins. But the Chargers are quietly, you know, stacking the wins, 6-3. This is, I think, better than a lot of people expected in Harbaugh's first year, but not totally surprised because this is what Harbaugh does. Yeah, this is huge. This is huge. Much bigger for Cincinnati because if they go 4-7, I'm not sure they can get back in the playoff picture in the AFC, especially with a healthy Tua in Miami and a much lighter schedule. So this is the Bengals season on the line here, and I think Joe Burrow here in prime time, maybe has maybe not his best game statistically, but that has that game that we say, yeah, he was not going to let them lose. So very excited, and hopefully the Bengals will have T. Higgins back for this one, which will give a already loaded offense even more of a boost. All right, Monday Night Football. Dun, 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 dun. Houston Texans at the Dallas Cowboys. So Governor's Cup matchup, right? The two teams from Texas. Obviously, Houston, a tough way to lose at home. Dallas, they're just a mess. So can the Cowboys, do they have a little pride? They have not won a home game, and in fact, they're getting blown out in all their home games. So can they muster a little something together and make this a competitive game and maybe stay in it to give them a chance to win? Is there some kind of, Texas pride on the line here that gives them a little boost? I'm not sure. I would be encouraged. Their defense did look a lot better last week, but if you cannot do anything offensively, that defense is going to get worn out. And even though the Houston Texans don't have their full arsenal, there a lot of injuries at the receiver position, they do have a running back in Joe Mixon that could eat this team up on the ground. So anyway, if I didn't mention the Arizona Cardinals, Carolina Panthers, New York Football Giants. So correct me there, Dan. It won't be Drew Lock next week. Following week, New York Football Giants or Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's because all these teams are on a bye. All right, that's all I got for this week. Enjoy the games, everybody.